didn't say a damn thing about the fact that I became a community organizer with the North Oakland Neighborhood Service Center, and when Huey P. Newton and I founded the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton and I was actually employed by the city government of Oakland Department of Human Resources, and in effect, bucked the crap that was going on in the War on Poverty program, founded the Black Panther Party, was still employed, said nothing about the fact that I'd been a stand-up comedian, said nothing about the fact that I'd been a jazz drummer and loved to style myself behind the way Brother Art Blakely used to blow, said nothing about these things to y'all. All they told you we was a bunch of hoodlums and thugs because we had some guns. People didn't understand why we picked those guns up. And it really had to do with the philosophical polemics and the perspective that Malcolm X gave us, and particularly gave me. See, back in the day when I was in the United States Air Force, I was the top man in tech school, I was the top man in cross-training, etc., etc., etc. And I didn't have no politics then, back in the 50s. Some white boy walked in one morning and called me a black nigger. Back in them days, in the 1950s, where I was from, Oakland, California, so a white boy from down home, Tallahassee, Cut Shoot, where he come from, 10 miles north of Mule Creek Junction, up in the United States Air Force Base, called me a black nigger. Well, I went off with a piece of metal extrusion, beating him all over the shop. Well, the commanding officer and the first sergeant was going to sit up and try to give me some dictionary definition, talking about the word nigger only means stingy. They put me in the stockade. Took all my rank. I mean, here I was, a young man, trying to place myself, dealing with skills and trades and professions, going to make something, going to have a family. One day, having been raised a carpenter in the building, going to build a nice big home, etc., 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 etc. And I'm running into this cold-blooded, institutionalized racism, and I don't give a damn if you're walking down the sidewalk somewhere. The fact that there's a crack in the sidewalk and where somebody can stumble over and hurt themselves has to do with the institutionalized political system that doesn't give a damn about black people, poor and low-income people, any kind of people of color who've been oppressed under the corporate racist capitalistic system in the United States of America. You see, here I was, a young man. I didn't know the word black then, way back then. You can call a black person black. You had a fight with another black person. You talking about being brainwashed. We was brainwashed. We was brainwashed backwards, forwards, sideways, and catacombs. We thought Africa was dark as Africa. I was raised on Tarzan movies with this idiot Tarzan that y'all heard about running around talking to the animals all these years, and these black folks been here for millions of years and they can't talk to one animal. All that kind of dumb stuff through that media, that paternalistic, white, racist crap, that's what I was brainwashed on. And one day, at Merritt College, long after I'm out of the United States Air Force, as an engineering design major, at the same time I was working the Gemini Missile Project because I had a night job at Kaiser Aerospace Electronics. I walked across the street and some brothers in some group called the Afro-American Association was talking about Afro-American as a correct social science reference to what we are about. We ain't Negroes, we ain't colored, we ain't Negroes. That's what they were saying, and it made sense because I knew the word Sioux was a white man's word that meant cutthroat and had nothing to do with the history and culture of the real Lakota people, the Native Americans. And I seen it, I said, yeah, you're right, brother, it makes sense, Afro-American. Right, because it was our descendancy. These brothers got to blowing about Timbuktu, about the Garnet Kingdom, about the Mali Kingdom, about the Songhay Kingdom, about Zimbabwe over in Africa. They got to blowing about people I never heard about, people like Richard Wright and W.B. Du Bois and some guy named Marcus Garvey who had started a shipping lines and everything. I didn't know nothing about this. This is in 1962, and I'm listening to these brothers, and it making so much sense, you know what I mean? And I said, well, man, why can't I get a book? So one of them showed me, he said, man, you ought to read that book there called Jomo Kenyatta, Facing Mount Kenya. I read that book and found out Tarzan didn't run Africa. When I read that book there, you start talking about doing some profound research. And I was enrolled at Merritt College, but the University of California at Berkeley was only 20 blocks up the road. They have 26 different libraries at that university. You know, that's where they developed the atomic bomb up there. Lawrence Radiation Laboratory connected with the University of California at Berkeley. That's what was in my backyard. But I'm just trying to say, when I got to researching and filing up the footnotes, Marvell J. Herskovitz, Myth of the Negro Past, The Slave Trade by Basil Davidson. Brother Leroy Jones of Mira Barak at that time popped out with a book called Blues People in 1963 that gave a whole chronological, historical rundown of our music and our struggle for justice and how we've been brainwashed. Hey man, this blew my mind to even know. And next thing I know, I'm studying Africa backwards, forwards, sideways, and catacombs. It was 1963 before I even realized that the Sharpton massacre had occurred a year earlier. It blew my mind. Looked up, Martin Luther King was speaking somewhere. I went downtown to see him. That was all right. That was cool. I understood where he's coming from. Then I heard some brother named Malcolm X with the Nation of Islam was coming to town to speak. Went over there to hear him blow. Stole my heart, stole my mind, captured my imagination. All I wanted to be was a young engineer, grow up, you know, a carpenter, builder, engineer, architect of some kind. But I looked around when I realized what was going on, when I realized the history of the oppression, when I realized, man, when I read that book by Herbert Absack that documented 250 slave revolts from 1800 to 1857, and what they call a slave revolt involved 10 or more people, which also chronicle Gabriel Prosser in 1800, Denmark Visa in 1822, Nat Turner in 1832, 31. Man, when I got a hold of this here, with Sojourner Truth and all the Underground Railroad and realized what Frederick Douglass and all this stuff meant, and came on up through the 1900s with Marcus Garvey and the attempt to put together an economic framework called the Black Star Shipping Lines, and realized what these races was doing to us, and then chronicled and read that book, 100 Years of Lynching. And my daddy sit up there one day in the living room, and I'm sitting up there reading, and I'm saying, you know, there was a lynching back down in East Texas. That's where my folks are from. He said, well, I remember that lynching there. But they told that boy to come out the steeple of that church. He came down there, and them white folks, once he got down and threw his gun out, put his hand up, he said, and no, they just shot that boy up 9, 10, 20 times and killed him. I said, well, Daddy, that's what it says in this book. I said, how come you didn't never tell me this before? Well, I don't know, you know. Y'all never did ask about nothing like that. Y'all seem to be interested in processing your head back then. I just... But it was profound to get this world realization. To understand the rampantness and the historical rampantness of colonial racist oppression and murder and exploitation. Brother, when I started studying Africa, I studied more than just the aesthetics. I was concerned about the mineral resources and the bowels of the earth. The chromium and the gold and the diamonds and the cobalt. I was understanding that from South Africa up through the middle of the Congo. When I found out that 40% of the world's copper ore came from the southern Katanga province of Zaire, then called the Congo, 40% of the world's copper ore, I understood the robbery, the racism, and oppression that the Europeans have been doing for years and will continue to do. I understood it very clearly. And Brother Malcolm X, I'm telling you, he went across, he did a whole trip throughout Africa, Mecca, what have you, etc., and redefined the so-called civil rights struggle in America. He redefined it in terms of international human rights, created the OAAU, the Organization of African American Union. That's what he did. He blew my mind, and I said, whoa, this brother's right. I'm sitting out there in Oakland, California,